What was the moment you lost all respect for a teacher? Mr. Davis was the kind of teacher every student wanted. He taught junior English, brought in snacks on test days, and stayed after school to help anyone who asked. He'd won Teacher of the Year twice in 4 years. When I transferred to Lincoln High in October, everyone told me how lucky I was to have his class third period. The first weird thing I noticed was how he picked certain students for special help. Always the same 5 kids, 2 girls and 3 guys, all sophomores and juniors. He'd keep them after class for extra tutoring even when they hadn't asked for it. I figured maybe they were struggling, but their grades were fine. Actually, they all had A's. One of them was my friend Kayla. She'd been normal at the start of the year, but by November she seemed different, quieter. She stopped hanging out with our group at lunch and started spending that time in Mr. Davis's classroom instead. When I asked why, she said he was helping her with college essay prep, but we were juniors. College essays weren't due for another year. Then I noticed the others doing the same thing, skipping lunch to be in his room, missing out on club meetings to stay for his after-school study sessions. Their parents probably thought they were being responsible students, getting ahead, but something about it felt wrong. I started paying attention during class. Mr. Davis would make jokes that only those 5 students seemed to understand. Inside references to conversations they'd had privately. He'd touch their shoulders when walking past their desks, but never touched anyone else. He'd let them use his laptop during free periods, but told the rest of us to use the computer lab. The messages started appearing in February. I'd see them on their phones during passing period. Quick texts they'd check and then immediately delete. One time I was walking behind Kayla in the hallway and saw Mr. Davis's name pop up on her screen before she cleared it. I asked her why our teacher was texting her. She said it was about homework, but we didn't have homework that night. I mentioned it to my mom, who said teachers communicate with students all the time now and I shouldn't make something out of nothing. I mentioned it to the guidance counselor, who said Mr. Davis was a dedicated educator who went above and beyond for struggling students, except they weren't struggling. They were all honor roll kids. By March, Kayla had stopped coming to school some days. When she was there, she looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. She'd lost weight. I asked if she was okay and she said she was just stressed about keeping her grades up for Mr. Davis. The way she said his name sounded wrong, like she was scared of disappointing him. I saw him drive her home one afternoon after school, just the 2 of them in his car. She lived 3 blocks away, walking distance. When I asked her about it the next day, she got defensive and said her mom knew and it wasn't a big deal. That's when I started looking closer at the pattern. All 5 students had changed over the school year. They'd become isolated from their old friend groups. They spent all their free time with Mr. Davis. Their parents thought they were getting extra academic help. The school thought he was being an exceptional mentor. But last week I stayed late working on the school newspaper, and I walked past his classroom around 6. The door was closed, but not locked. I heard voices inside, his voice and Kayla's voice. I stood there for a minute trying to decide if I should knock or leave. Then I heard her crying. I opened the door, and what I saw on his computer screen changed everything. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below. The images on the screen burn into my memory like acid. My stomach lurches violently as I recognize Kayla's face among the children in the photos. The room spins, and before I can stop myself, I'm doubling over and vomiting onto the classroom floor. What are you doing in here? Mr. Davis's voice sounds distant through the roaring in my ears. He's already closing windows on his laptop, but it's too late. I've seen everything. I lunge forward, grabbing Kayla's arm and yanking her away from him. She's trembling, tears streaming down her face. Get away from her, I shout, my voice cracking. I pull Kayla behind me, putting my body between her and Mr. Davis. What the hell is wrong with you? Mr. Davis stands slowly, his expression shifting from shock to something calculated. This isn't what it looks like. I was conducting research on online predators targeting students. I'm trying to protect kids like Kayla. Kayla collapses against me, her body racked with sobs. He said he'd hurt my family, she whispers, her voice barely audible. He knows where my little sister goes to daycare. He showed me pictures of her playing outside. My blood runs cold. With one arm still around Kayla, I pull my phone from my pocket and dial 911. My fingers shaking so badly I have to try twice. Stay where you are, I tell Mr. Davis, positioning myself to block the doorway. He's watching me with an eerie calmness that makes my skin crawl. 911. What's your emergency? The operator's voice cuts through the chaos in my head. I'm at Lincoln High School, room 237. I need police immediately. I just caught a teacher with child pornography on his computer. One of the victims is here with me now. My voice sounds steadier than I feel. Mr. Davis takes a step toward us. You're making a serious mistake. I can explain everything. Don't come any closer, I shout, tightening my grip on Kayla. Officers are on their way, the dispatcher says. Stay on the line. Is the teacher still in the room? Yes. He's trying to tell me it's research, that he's protecting students. The absurdity of his excuse makes me want to scream. It is research, Mr. Davis insists, his voice taking on an authoritative tone I've heard him use in class. As educators, we need to understand the dangers our students face. I was documenting evidence to present to the school board about online safety protocols. Kayla's sobbing intensifies. He made me do things, she chokes out. He said no one would believe me if I told. I hear sirens in the distance, growing louder. Mr. Davis hears them too. His expression changes subtly, and he sits back down at his desk, closing his laptop. You're destroying my career over a misunderstanding, he says calmly. I've dedicated my life to these students. The first officers arrive within minutes, bursting into the classroom with hands on their weapons. One of them immediately separates Mr. Davis from us, while another approaches Kayla and me. Are you the caller? A female officer asks me. I nod, still holding Kayla, who seems unable to stand on her own. The images were on his laptop, I tell her. He closed it, but they were there. Kayla was in them. More officers arrive, followed by school security. One officer takes Mr. Davis's laptop, while another begins questioning him. Davis maintains his composure, speaking in measured tones about his research project. The contrast between his calm demeanor and Kayla's hysterical state is chilling. We need to search the room, the female officer says. 2 other officers begin methodically going through Mr. Davis's desk, Check above the ceiling tiles, Kayla whispers suddenly. That's where he keeps the drives. The officers exchange glances before one of them pulls a chair over and pushes up a ceiling tile near Mr. Davis's desk. He reaches in and pulls out a small plastic bag containing several USB drives. Mr. Davis's calm facade finally cracks. Those are personal backup files, he snaps. You have no right. Sir, you need to remain silent. An officer cuts him off, handcuffing him. The female officer guides Kayla and me to separate desks. We need to ask you both some questions, she explains gently. I know this is difficult, but it's important we understand exactly what happened. I sit with Kayla, holding her hand as she struggles to speak through her tears. She tells the officer how it started with extra tutoring sessions, then special projects, then private messaging, how the threats began when she wanted to stop coming to his classroom, how he'd shown her pictures of her 6-year-old sister to ensure her silence. The school is in chaos now. The principal, Mr. Matthews, arrives looking shell-shocked. Parents begin showing up, summoned by frantic texts from their children as rumors spread. Sirens continue to wail outside as more police vehicles arrive. I had no idea, Matthews keeps repeating to the officers. Davis was our most respected teacher. Teacher of the year. Twice. There were never any complaints. But the evidence keeps mounting. When officers check the USB drives, their expressions grow grimmer. One of them steps outside to vomit. Another makes a call requesting additional investigators and forensic specialists. Kayla's parents burst into the classroom, her mother's face contorted with anguish as she wraps her arms around her daughter. Why didn't you tell us? She sobs, but Kayla can only shake her head, unable to speak. My own parents arrive minutes later, my mother pulling me into a fierce hug while my father demands answers from anyone who will listen. Through it all, I watch Mr. Davis being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of composure that occasionally slips to reveal flashes of something dark and calculating. Just before they take him out the door, he looks back at me, and the hatred in his eyes makes me physically recoil. You should have minded your own business, he says softly, but the officer jerks him forward before he can say more. As night falls on Lincoln High, the truth begins to emerge in horrifying clarity. The 5 students, the special attention, the inside jokes, the text messages. It was all part of a predatory pattern that had been hiding in plain sight for years, and no one had noticed until today. The next few days blur into a nightmarish haze. I keep seeing those images every time I close my eyes. My parents notice I'm not sleeping, but I can't bring myself to tell them exactly what I saw on that screen. How do you even put something like that into words? Detective Reyes calls me on Tuesday morning. We've identified 5 students from Lincoln in the images, she says, her voice professional but gentle, including Kayla. There are others from different schools too. My stomach twists. Different schools? Mr. Davis taught at 3 other schools before Lincoln. We're contacting them now, she pauses. The investigation is revealing. This has been going on for years. He was distributing content through encrypted networks. I think about all those USB drives hidden in the ceiling tiles, the careful way he'd arranged his classroom computer to face away from the door, the special attention he gave to those 5 students, 2 girls, 3 boys. It wasn't random. Nothing about it was random. We need you to come in again today, Detective Reyes continues. There are some follow-up questions. At the station, I see parents I recognize from school sitting in the waiting area, their faces ashen and hollow. Kayla's mom notices me and comes over, pulling me into a fierce hug. Thank you, she whispers. If you hadn't walked in when you did, she can't finish the sentence. A group of parents has already formed a support network, exchanging phone numbers and meeting times. I overhear fragments of their conversations, therapy recommendations, legal advice, questions about how to talk to their children about what happened. Did you know they ignored complaints about him before? A father's angry voice cuts through the murmurs. Everyone turns to look at him. My nephew was at Westridge when Davis taught there. His parents complained about inappropriate texts 3 years ago, but the administration brushed it off, said Davis was just connecting with students. The room erupts in outrage. I feel sick all over again. That night, the school announces an emergency meeting for the following evening. The gymnasium is packed with parents, students, teachers, and even some news crews hovering outside. Principal Matthews looks like he's aged a decade since I last saw him. We are cooperating fully with the investigation, he begins, his voice shaking slightly. Mr. Davis has been terminated, and we're reviewing all of our safety protocols. Why didn't you check his background properly? Someone shouts from the crowd. Matthews adjusts his tie nervously. Mr. Davis had excellent references from schools that were covering up his behavior. Kayla's father stands up, his face flushed with anger. We've been talking to parents from his previous schools. There were warning signs everywhere. To my shock, several parents stand up to defend Davis. A woman in a Lincoln High booster jacket rises, her voice quavering. We shouldn't rush to judgment. Mr. Davis helped my son get into Princeton. He spent hours with him after school working on applications. That's exactly the problem, Kayla's mother shouts. Those hours after school weren't all spent on college essays. The meeting descends into chaos. I sit frozen, watching people I've known for years argue about whether a man I caught red-handed might be innocent. How can they still defend him? Then I remember, Davis was teacher of the year, twice. He coached debate team to state championships. He wrote glowing college recommendations. He was careful to build a reputation that would shield him. Miss Winters, my history teacher, approaches the microphone. Her hands are shaking. I need to say something, she begins, her voice barely audible. The room gradually quiets. I saw things that concerned me. Last year, I noticed Mr. Davis texting with students during staff meetings. I saw him driving Kayla home multiple times. I thought he was just being a dedicated teacher. One by one, other teachers stand to confess similar observations. Mr. Rodriguez saw Davis with students in his classroom, with the door locked. Mrs. Patel noticed how he singled out certain vulnerable kids for special projects. Each of them thought their individual concern wasn't enough to report. Then Mr. Collins, the guidance counselor, steps forward. His face is gray. Kayla came to me in November, he admits. She asked hypothetical questions about what would happen if a teacher was inappropriate with a student. I gave her pamphlets about boundaries. I didn't follow up. I failed her. I remember how Kayla changed in November, how she stopped raising her hand in class, how she flinched when her phone buzzed with texts. tests. All those signs I ignored because I was the new kid, because I didn't want to make assumptions. The meeting ends with an announcement that Principal Matthews has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The school board is bringing in an interim principal and a team of counselors. The FBI is now involved because of the distribution network they found on Davis's devices. That night, I sit on my bed staring at the wall, replaying every interaction I had with Davis since transferring in October. The way he'd always ask about Kayla if she was absent, how he'd sometimes stand too close to students, his hand lingering on their shoulders, the inside jokes he'd share with those 5 kids that made them feel special, chosen. I think about the day I walked into his classroom and found him with Kayla. If I'd been 5 minutes later, if I'd decided to go straight home instead, if I hadn't noticed the change in my friend. My phone buzzes with a text from Kayla. Can't sleep. Keep seeing his face. I respond immediately. Me too. I'm so sorry I didn't realize sooner. Her reply comes quickly. Don't. You're the only one who saw it. The only one who did something. But that's the thing that keeps me awake at night. I wasn't the only one who saw. Plenty of people saw the warning signs. They just chose not to connect the dots. They chose the comfortable explanation over the terrifying truth. They chose to protect a respected colleague rather than vulnerable children. And somewhere in those choices, monsters like Davis found all the space they needed to operate in plain sight. 6 weeks have passed since that day in Mr. Davis's classroom, but it feels like 6 years. The preliminary hearing starts at 9 a.m., and I've been awake since 4, my stomach in knots, rehearsing what I'll say when they call me to testify. The courthouse is imposing all marble and echoing hallways. Detective Reyes meets us in the lobby, her face grim but professional. You'll go in one at a time, she explains. Try to focus on exactly what you saw, not what you felt or thought afterward. When they finally call me in, the courtroom feels smaller than I expected. Mr. Davis sits at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, his hands folded neatly in front of him. He doesn't look at me as I walk to the witness stand, but I feel his presence like a physical weight. I describe what I saw on his computer screen that day, my voice shaking despite my determination to stay calm. The prosecutor shows me screenshots carefully edited to remove the most disturbing content while still making clear what they are. I identify Kayla in one of them, and my voice breaks. Through it all, Mr. Davis remains expressionless. Not angry, not scared, not remorseful, just blank. It's more disturbing than if he'd been raging or crying. When Kayla takes the stand after me, she looks fragile but determined. Her voice is barely audible at first, but grows stronger as she describes how it started the special attention, the compliments on her writing, the extra help after school that slowly evolved into something sinister. How he isolated her, made her feel special, then threatened her when she wanted it to stop. He showed me pictures of my little sister at her daycare, she says, her hands twisting in her lap. He said he knew exactly when she played outside, that accidents happen to little kids all the time. Davis finally shows emotion, then a slight tightening of his jaw, a narrowing of his eyes as he stares at Kayla. The judge notices and warns his attorney to control his client. Outside the courtroom during a recess, Detective Reyes pulls me aside. 3 more victims came forward yesterday, she tells me quietly. Former students from Westridge High, where he taught 4 years ago. How many is that now? I ask, my throat dry. 17 confirmed victims across 4 schools, she says. The earliest we've found so far is from 2011. That night, I can't sleep. I keep checking news updates on my phone. The case has exploded in the media. The Washington Post published a timeline showing how Davis moved from school to school whenever suspicions arose. The pattern is horrifying in its simplicity. Each time a student or parent raised concerns, he'd resign for personal reasons or new opportunities, only to be hired months later by another unsuspecting district. My phone buzzes with a text from Kayla's mom. Did you see the emails? I hadn't, but I find them quickly. Someone leaked internal school board communications to the press. Emails from 2019 show Principal Matthews and 2 board members discussing a concerning incident involving Davis and a student named Tyler. They decided to handle it internally to avoid unnecessary disruption and potential liability. By morning, 3 school board members have resigned. Social media is on fire with parents demanding answers. The superintendent calls an emergency press conference where he appears visibly shaken, promising a complete overhaul of hiring practices and full accountability. On Saturday, I visit Kayla at Pinewood Treatment Center, where she's been staying since her panic attacks became too severe for outpatient therapy. The facility is peaceful, with gardens and large windows. Kayla looks better than the last time I saw her, less haunted around the eyes. We sit in the courtyard, watching birds at a feeder. I told them about Sophie yesterday, she says suddenly. Your sister? I ask. She nods. That was the worst part. Not what he did to me, but the constant fear for her. Her voice drops to a whisper. He knew which daycare she went to. He had pictures of her on the playground. He described her favorite stuffed animal, the one she carries everywhere. She takes a shuddering breath. I couldn't tell anyone because what if he wasn't bluffing? What if he hurt her because I talked? I take her hand, not knowing what to say. What comfort could possibly address that level of terror? That evening, Mrs. Davis holds a press conference that dominates every news channel. She stands alone at a podium, her face drawn and pale. I want to address the victims directly, she begins, her voice trembling. I did not know what my husband was doing, but my ignorance doesn't absolve me of responsibility. She pauses, visibly struggling. I lived with this man for 18 years. I should have seen something. I should have known. And for that failure, I am profoundly sorry. She announces she's filing for divorce and will donate their house and all shared assets to a foundation for abuse survivors. The reporters pepper her with questions, but she answers only one. No, there were never any children in our home. We couldn't have them. He always said it was for the best because his students were like his children. Her voice breaks on the last word. The next morning brings news that the FBI has arrested 6 more people connected to Davis's online network, 3 in California, 1 in Texas, and 2 in New Jersey. All of them worked with children in some capacity. The scope of the investigation keeps expanding, revealing a carefully constructed web of predators, sharing techniques and content. Monday night, the district holds another meeting. This time, the gymnasium can't contain the crowd. It spills into the hallways and parking lot. Parents take turns at the microphone, their anger no longer directed just at Davis, but at the system that protects protected him. My daughter told her guidance counselor she felt uncomfortable with Mr. Davis's text messages last year, one mother says, her voice shaking with rage. She was told she was misinterpreting his interest in her writing. My son was failed in English after he stopped going to Davis's after-school sessions, another parent reveals. When I complained, I was told my son wasn't putting in the effort. The superintendent, Dr. Harmon, sits on stage absorbing the fury, occasionally wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. When everyone has spoken, he approaches the microphone slowly, looking decades older than he did at the beginning of the school year. There is nothing I can say that will undo the harm that has been done, he begins. We failed these children. I failed these children. He takes a deep breath. The board has accepted my resignation, effective immediately. But before I go, I want to be completely transparent about how this happened. He details the systemic failures, the ignored complaints, the glowing references despite red flags, the culture of silence that prioritized the school's reputation over student safety. He reveals that Davis's personnel file contained 3 sealed complaints that were never investigated properly. The most devastating part, he concludes, is that if any one of us, myself included, had simply connected the dots, had taken one complaint seriously enough to dig deeper, this could have been stopped years ago. As I leave the meeting with my parents, I spot Kayla's father standing alone by his car. He looks up as we approach, his face haggard with exhaustion. The therapist says she's making progress, he tells us, but she still wakes up screaming most nights. He shakes his head slowly. How do we ever make this right for them? None of us has an answer. Because the truth is, we can't make it right. We can only try to ensure it never happens again. I sit in the back of the crowded courtroom, watching as the judge delivers the sentence that will define the rest of Mr. Davis's life. It's been exactly 1 year since I walked into his classroom and found him with Kayla. 1 year since those images burned themselves permanently into my memory. 40 years, the judge announces, her voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. No possibility of parole for 30. Davis doesn't react. His face remains as blank and emotionless as it was during the preliminary hearing. It's only when they lead him away that I catch a glimpse of something in his eyes, not remorse, but anger. The mask slips just long enough for me to see the monster beneath. Kayla squeezes my hand. She's sitting between her parents, her face thin but determined. She's been in therapy for months, slowly rebuilding the pieces of herself that Davis shattered. It's over, she whispers, but we both know it isn't. Not really. The sentencing is just one more milestone in a journey that will last a lifetime. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarm around us, shoving microphones in our faces. Kayla's father steps forward, shielding her from the cameras. My daughter has been through enough, he says firmly. We're asking for privacy as our family continues to heal. 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in another courtroom watching Principal Matthews and 2 administrators from the district office receive their sentences for criminal negligence. The evidence against them was overwhelming emails, complaints that were buried, warnings they ignored from other schools. 2 years, the judge says, looking directly at Matthews, plus 5 years probation and permanent revocation of your educational credentials. Matthews looks old and broken, nothing like the confident administrator who once ruled Lincoln High. I feel no satisfaction watching him crumble, only a hollow ache that so many people failed to protect children who trusted them. The civil lawsuit against the school district settles for $12 million, divided among the victims. Kayla tells me her parents are putting most of her share into a trust fund for her college and therapy, with some set aside for her sister Sophie's education. Money doesn't fix what happened, she says as we sit in her backyard one afternoon in early spring. But my lawyer says it forces accountability. Schools will be more careful if they know ignoring abuse could cost them millions. By the time summer arrives, Lincoln High has transformed. There are cameras in every hallway and classroom. Teachers can't meet with students behind closed doors. Background checks are now exhaustive, including contacting colleagues at previous schools, not just administrators. Every adult on campus has gone through intensive training on recognizing grooming behaviors and reporting protocols. Dr. Rivera, our new principal, stops me in the hallway one day as I'm heading to class. The state education conference is next month, she says. They've asked if you and Kayla would be willing to speak about your experience, about the warning signs people missed. I hesitate. Public speaking terrifies me, and talking about what happened still makes my chest tight with anxiety. But then I think about all the Mr. Davis is still out there, all the schools that haven't learned from our nightmare. I'll talk to Kayla, I tell her. I think we might be ready. The conference room is packed with educators from across the state when Kayla and I take the stage in July. My hands shake as I adjust the microphone, but my voice stays steady as I describe what happened. Not the graphic details, but the pattern, the special attention to certain students, the texting, the rides home, the inside jokes, the way he isolated vulnerable kids and made them feel special before exploiting them. It wasn't invisible, I tell the silent audience. It was hiding in plain sight. Everyone saw pieces of it, but no one put them together. When Kayla steps forward to speak, her voice is quiet but unwavering. I thought no one would believe me, she says. I thought I was protecting my family by staying silent. What I needed was for just one adult to notice, to ask the right questions, to push past my denials and see what was really happening. After the conference, 5 students from different schools approach us. They've started a foundation called Visible Now that provides resources for abuse survivors and trains students to recognize predatory behavior. They ask if we join their board. We're focusing on peer education, explains a girl named Melissa. Adults often miss things that other kids notice. We want to create a network where students feel safe reporting concerns about teachers or coaches. By fall, Kayla is back at Lincoln full-time. She still has bad days, panic attacks, nightmares, moments when a random trigger sends her spiraling back to that classroom. But she's also laughing again, raising her hand in class, making plans for college. I've started taking psychology courses online, fascinated by trauma recovery and determined to someday help others heal from experiences like ours. The nightmares haven't stopped completely, but they're less frequent now. In October, Governor Whitman signs the Safe Schools Act, requiring comprehensive background checks that include contacting former colleagues, not just supervisors. Schools must now document and investigate every complaint, no matter how minor minor it seems. The law also creates a statewide database tracking teacher misconduct that can't be hidden by confidential settlements. This legislation won't erase what happened to these brave young people, the governor says at the signing ceremony, where Kayla and I stand among the other survivors, but it will help ensure their suffering leads to meaningful change. On graduation day in June, I watch Kayla cross the stage to receive her diploma. When her name is called, there's a moment of silence before the crowd erupts in thunderous applause. Students, parents, teachers, everyone is on their feet, not out of pity, but respect for her resilience. As she accepts her diploma, Kayla looks out at the crowd and does something I haven't seen in nearly 2 years. She smiles, a real smile that reaches her eyes and lights up her whole face. It's not a happy ending, there's no such thing after what we've been through, but it's a beginning, a moment that proves healing is possible, that monsters like Davis don't get to define the rest of our lives. Later, at her parents' graduation party, Kayla pulls me aside. I got accepted to Berkeley, she tells me, her eyes bright with cautious excitement. Psychology major. That's amazing, I say, genuinely thrilled for her. You'll be incredible, she nods, looking out at her family and friends celebrating in the backyard. I keep thinking about all the other kids out there, the ones who haven't been found yet, who are still trapped with their own Mr. Davis. We're going to help them, I promise her. That's why we're doing all of this. She squeezes my hand. I know, that's how we win, right? By making sure what happened to us can't happen to anyone else? I nod, thinking about how far we've come in a year, and how far we still have to go. That's exactly how we win.